A lonely whisper of wind curled through the grasslands where Red Hawk walked, his boots heavy with mud and memory. The sky was a bruised purple when he first heard the faint cry, an unexpected, jagged sound that split the quiet of evening. For years he had lived with the silence that follows loss, a silence he had come to think of as home. But that call drew something raw and immediate from within him, a spark he thought had long since died. He found her half submerged in the river, the cold water tugging at her limbs as though it was trying to steal her away. At first he thought she was gone, her skin pale against the rolling blue, eyes closed, but then she gasped, a tremor of breath that was both fragile and ferocious. Red Hawk waded in without hesitation, the chill biting at his bones, and reached her side. Her name was Clara, though he learned that much later. In that moment, she was simply a trembling weight in his arms, her long hair plastered against her cheek like dark waterweed. She looked smaller than she was, like someone who had already faded before she even began. He lifted her, step by careful step, until their feet found the muddy bank. Somewhere behind them, the sun sank beneath distant hills, casting blood-red streaks across the sky. Red Hawk held Clara's head in his lap while she coughed and fought the cold's icy grip. He did not speak, words felt too loud, too immediate. Instead, he breathed with her, matching her rhythm until her eyes fluttered open, once, twice, then finally settled with a shudder that seemed to shake something deeper than her body. "Thank you," she whispered, voice cracked like broken earth. He shook his head, offering only a look that carried no pretense of heroism. He had merely done what any soul would have done. Yet as they sat there on the wet grass, waiting for the tremors to leave her limbs, something between them shifted like tectonic plates rearranging the land. Clara told him she had been traveling alone, searching for someone who had vanished without a trace. She spoke of long days spent walking dusty roads, of nights lulled by false hope, and of the river, a landmark she had hoped would guide her. But the currents had been treacherous that day, pulling her under before she even realized she was in danger. Red Hawk listened, not out of politeness, but because he recognized the weight in her voice, the exhaustion of someone carrying more than just their body. He knew what it felt like to wander with no destination, to search for something you could no longer name except in the hollow of your chest. "Where are you headed now?" he asked when the first stars began to blink awake overhead. Clara hesitated, eyes drifting toward the darkening horizon. "I don't know," she admitted. "But I have to find him." "Who?" Red Hawk asked gently. Her breath caught, and for a moment she looked away, gazing at the flickering fireflies like distant lanterns. "My brother. He disappeared 6 months ago. We were so close, closer than anyone could understand. And then he was gone." Red Hawk nodded, the weight of her words pressing like stones in his gut. He'd lost people too, his family to a sickness that swept through their village, his friends to the endless tide of time and war. Loss was a familiar companion, a ghost that trailed him through every sunrise. They sat until darkness wrapped the world in its velvet cloak, and when Clara's shivers finally ceased, Red Hawk built a small fire. She watched the flames, eyes reflecting embers like twin stars. He did not ask her to tell more, some wounds cannot be pried open with words alone. Morning came with a shy light that brushed the river in gold. Clara stirred, alert and alive, and when she met Red Hawk's gaze, there was a spark in her eyes that had been absent the night before. "I should go," she said, her voice steadier now. Red Hawk nodded, though something inside him tightened at the prospect of her leaving. When she turned to walk, her steps firm against last night's fear, he felt an unexpected ache, an unspoken pull that urged him to stay connected to this brave stranger who carried loss like a second skin. But Clara did not leave alone. In the days that followed, she asked Red Hawk to walk with her part of the way. At first, it was just until the next bend in the trail, then to the next village, then beyond. Their journey unfolded like a slow revelation, with laughter breaking the silence and long conversations beneath starlit skies. They shared stories of homes lost and dreams deferred, of moments that shaped them into who they were. At times, Clara's gaze would linger on the horizon, eyes distant with longing, and Red Hawk would feel his heart tighten, not in fear of losing her, but in awe of her unwavering faith in finding her brother. He saw in her a resilience that refused to be extinguished, a flame that burned bright even when surrounded by shadows. One night, as fireflies danced their quiet dance, Clara spoke of a name, Michael. Her voice trembled, not with grief anymore, but with hope tinged with fear. I feel like I'm close, she said, gaze fixed on the stars. I can almost hear his voice. Red Hawk watched her face, illuminated by the fire's glow, and felt an unfamiliar warmth spread through him. It was not love, not the fierce, fiery kind, but something softer, deeper, like roots entwining beneath the ground, invisible yet unbreakable. The path they walked led them through valleys and forests, across streams that whispered secrets, and up ridges that offered views of endless sky. With each step, Clara's conviction grew, and Red Hawk found his own heart following her lead, driven by something he had long forsaken, hope. Then, one evening, on a ridge overlooking a town that glowed with lamplit promise, Clara faltered. Her eyes brimmed with tears, not of sadness, but of fear and uncertainty. They had come so far, yet the end of her journey was still uncertain. What if he wasn't there? What if the path led only to more pain? Red Hawk took her hand, his grip firm and reassuring. You do not walk alone, he said, his voice a steady anchor. Even if the road ahead is unknown, I am with you. Clara looked at him, something shifting in her gaze, a recognition of strength she had forgotten she possessed, mirrored in a companion who had become more than a stranger. Together, they walked into the town, hearts pounding with anticipation. The search took them to doorsteps and dusty records, to people who remembered a young man with a gentle smile and kind eyes. Some offered help, others offered only sympathetic shrugs. Days passed with no word, until one afternoon, they found a small cafe where local musicians gathered and played melodies that carried the soul's longing. It was there, amidst laughter and song, that Clara saw him, her brother, Michael, his face weathered but unmistakable. Time had etched lines of hardship on him, yet his eyes held the same warmth. The night she almost died, the river was calm enough to look harmless. It slid past the banks like a quiet thought, reflecting the moon in broken pieces. Evelyn had stood there longer than she intended, shoes soaked, coat heavy, listening to the water tell her lies about rest and silence. She was tired in a way sleep could not fix, tired of searching for someone who had vanished and left her with questions that never learned how to be quiet. When she stepped forward, the current surprised her. Cold wrapped around her legs, then her waist, then her chest, stealing her breath before she could scream. Panic came fast, sharp and humiliating. She fought, clawing at the dark, but the river was stronger, pulling her under with a patience that felt cruel. She did not know how long she was gone. When consciousness returned, it came with pain and coughing and the sensation of hands gripping her shoulders, dragging her against stones and mud. She rolled onto her side, water spilling from her mouth as she gasped like someone learning how to breathe for the first time. Easy, a man's voice said, low and steady. You're safe now. Evelyn lay there trembling, staring at boots planted beside her, at hands rough and scarred but careful. The man crouched so she could see his face. He looked older than he probably was, eyes carrying a heaviness that suggested long familiarity with loss. I didn't mean to, she whispered, though she wasn't sure what she meant by that. I just slipped. He nodded as if he understood more than her words. The river doesn't care why, he said. But you're out of it now. His name was Thomas. He wrapped his coat around her shoulders and guided her to a small fire he had built nearby, a weak orange glow fighting the dark. As the warmth seeped back into her bones, she felt embarrassment creep in, followed by something sharper, fear at how close she had come to disappearing. They did not talk much that night. Thomas fed the fire, kept watch while she shivered and drifted in and out of sleep. When morning arrived, pale and unsure, Evelyn woke with a stiff neck and aching muscles but the certainty that she was still alive. That alone felt like something worth acknowledging. Thank you, she said, sitting up slowly. For staying. Thomas shrugged, though his eyes softened. Didn't feel right to leave. They shared a quiet breakfast of bread and bitter coffee. Eventually, Evelyn told him about her brother, Daniel, who had left home a year ago and never returned. About the last message he'd sent, vague and apologetic, promising to explain everything soon. About how, soon, had turned into months of silence. I keep thinking I'm close, she said, staring into her cup. Like the next town will have answers. But every road feels the same. Thomas listened without interrupting. When she finished, he nodded once. I know that feeling, he said. He did not elaborate, but the weight behind his words told her enough. When she stood to leave, slinging her bag over her shoulder, Thomas hesitated. I'm heading east, he said. Part of the way, at least. You don't have to walk alone. She studied him, unsure why the offer eased something tight in her chest. Maybe it was the simple kindness of it. Maybe it was the way he said it without expectation. She nodded. I'd like that. They walked together through fields and small towns, the days unfolding slowly, the road stretching ahead in quiet promise. Thomas spoke little at first, but as miles passed, words came easier. He told her about his wife, lost to illness 5 years earlier, and how the world had felt dimmer ever since, like a room with a burned-out light bulb no one bothered to replace. I stopped planning, he admitted one night as they sat beneath a sky crowded with stars. Stopped believing things could change. Evelyn watched the firelight dance across his face. Then why keep? Their bond grew quietly, built from shared silences and small moments, laughter over burnt food, conversations that stretched late into the night, the comfort of knowing someone else was carrying the weight beside you. Evelyn found herself sleeping more deeply, breathing more easily. For the first time in months, the search did not feel like punishment. Then came the town by the old railway. A clerk at a rundown inn recognized Daniel's name. Stayed here a while back, he said. Left with a group heading south. Said he was looking for work. The news hit Evelyn like a rush of cold air. Relief tangled with fear. He was alive. Or at least he had been. That night, she barely slept, heart racing with anticipation and dread. They followed the lead south, days blurring together. In a crowded market, Evelyn froze, staring at a familiar posture, a way of standing that felt carved into her memory. She moved without thinking, pushing through people, heart pounding. Daniel, she breathed. He turned. The recognition took a moment, disbelief flickering across his face before collapsing into shock. Then he was holding her, both of them crying, laughter breaking through sobs as though joy itself had forgotten how to behave. I thought I lost you, Evelyn said into his shoulder. I'm so sorry, Daniel whispered. I didn't know how to come back. Thomas watched from a distance, a soft smile on his face that didn't quite reach his eyes. When Daniel finally stepped back, he extended a hand. Thank you, he said. For helping her. Thomas shook it, nodding. She did most of the walking herself. That night, the siblings talked for hours, filling the gaps with stories and apologies. Evelyn felt whole in a way she had not believed possible. Yet beneath the joy, something ached. She kept glancing at Thomas, aware that this chapter of her journey was ending. In the morning, Thomas packed quietly. I'll head out, he said. You've got family now. Evelyn felt panic rise. You don't have to go, she said quickly. You could stay. At least a while. Thomas met her gaze, and for a moment she saw how badly he wanted to say yes. But he shook his head gently. This was your road, he said. I was just walking beside you. She hugged him, fiercely, feeling his arms tighten as though memorizing the shape of her. You saved my life, she said. He smiled, eyes shining. You reminded me I still had one. As he walked away, Evelyn watched until he disappeared into the distance. The ache remained, but it was softer now, edged with gratitude. She turned back to Daniel, to the future waiting to be rebuilt. Miles away, Thomas walked on, the road no longer empty. He carried with him the knowledge that even broken journeys could lead to light, that sometimes saving someone else meant saving the part of yourself you thought was gone forever.